You know, daydreaming helped me back in life. When I was younger, I used to daydream excessively. Um, I would be lost in thought about riches and easy life, and that was all I wanted. But then I would come back to reality, and it was a complete opposite. And I'm not going to say that my life was completely terrible. I definitely had many opportunities and chances, and I would say I was able to have a quite easy life. But I did struggle in some aspects. I would agonize about going to school, and I knew I had to go to school in order to get a job that would pay me extremely well. And then, I'd end up a couple years later in high school, I'd end up getting a job, and I would work tirelessly, many hours, and I worked as hard as I could. And then I would come home, and then, I would still have these dreams of grandeur. I'd wanted to become a better version of myself and be able to take care of the people that I care about, my family. Then I'd come home tired, and I would beat myself up, mentally and endlessly, because I knew that I couldn't do anymore, and that this was the extent of my prowess in order to work. Come to terms that I was doing the best I could at that time. And another thing was that I told a lot of people when I was younger, about my dreams. These people were my friends, and I understand that friends, are there to have fun, sometimes make fun of you, but it's all like a playful kind of thing. And they laughed at the dreams I had, and I'm genuinely not trying to farm pity points or anything like that, but I was a quite emotional kid, as some would say, a sensitive kid, growing up. But I still had these dreams of becoming better, and I tell the people that I thought cared about me, and then they end up making fun of me. And I also started to think of myself as these ideas that I have, these dreams that I have are stupid, that they're dumb. And the thing was that, and the thing was, after all this, sort of backlash and these words that hurt me a lot. I couldn't believe, even what I was saying to myself. I thought they were just very stupid ideas. And I think back then probably should have just, kept quiet, held that information to myself. But, when you're a kid, you want to speak and you want to say as much as you can, just because, you're just very hyper and active like that. And once I got into high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. Those dreams that I had when I was in middle school, when I was younger, were gone. I thought they were, if anything, weird, like they made me seem weird or something. And I didn't want to be seen as weird, because I already felt like a sort of outcast in the people that I was around the same age as. And, I was aimless, I and I thought that if I go to college, this would help me, and this would bring me that future that I wanted. Everyone else is going to college, and surely they wouldn't lie about college. College must be this golden path that if I take it, everybody can succeed in life. A lot of people that I knew had many side gigs, and I also wanted to have one as well. I wanted to have a job as well. And I was able to sort of, in my third year, I believe, in my junior year of high school, in that summer, I was able to get some time to myself and just come to terms with my limitations. And I was able to understand what I really wanted. And the things I went to say, they were harder than the things that I'm saying, they're significantly harder to do than actually say. And it took me many years for me to really be able to come to terms with my inabilities and what my strengths were. I know it sounds quite corny, but and I and I'm sure that if I was younger and I could tell myself that, oh, you like personal finance, you like learning about money and how you can have it work while you are sleeping or something. I think a kid me would have been like, yeah, no way, sounds like a scam or something. And I don't blame myself for that. But now I can't even stop myself from talking about personal finance. I talk to friends and family about this, and I want them to also be able to have and make money while they're chilling out. And many people don't really understand that investing takes a long time. Yeah, but maybe they aren't willing to wait that sort of long amount of time, or they just don't really believe that, oh, if I let this money sit and I continue to add into it, even though it's a couple $100 now, it will grow to maybe hundreds of thousands. And I completely understand where people are coming from in that sort of regard, but that's just something that I believe that I myself want to do, and I want to have other people that I really care about understand where I'm coming from, and also be able to have this chance of at least knowing that they can make this kind of money, instead of having to work endless hours, 80 hours, at a job that they hate. There'd be times where I'd be talking to my friends and family, and they would be like, kind of like annoyed or stressed out that, that this kind of stuff wasn't taught to them, and that this kind of money making machine, which is time, something that we can't buy back, was never taught in school. And I can't blame them myself. But at the end of the day, this personal financing, this hobby that I really love, I just do it because I want to be able to have that dream that I had when I was younger. I want to be able to have a lot of money and be able to relax. And I think being able to invest money is already half is getting half of the way there, because I'm able to relax now. I'm able to make a couple $100 every sort of day, as long as the market goes up. And if it goes down, then I can always buy more shares and stuff like that. And that's genuinely something that I care about, and I want to be able to understand myself, come to terms with myself, and learn about myself, and instead of having to use the internet as a way to sort of cloud my judgment of who and what I can be in my life, because that's something I struggled at because that's something I struggled with when I was younger. I had struggles with my identity, what who I was, what I really wanted to do in life, and now I have at least a sort of roadmap of where and what I want to do once I get older. And I think at least just having a sort of idea, even if it isn't complete, that it's better than nothing. I know that this video has sort of been a bit personal and sort of negative, and I apologize about that, but I genuinely believe that many people, in this generation, Gen Z, should, try to find time for themselves. Try to find a time of relaxation, period of relaxation, and try to genuinely come to, the term, and genuinely come to terms with their limitations. But the thing was, don't be like me when I was younger and sort of agonize it that you can have more, because as long as you're doing your best, you shouldn't have any regrets about that. And I know it's a very cliche thing, but that's something that, as long as you hold to to yourself, to your standard, that you are doing the best that you can, that you won't feel miserable. And at the end of the day, we can't just spend the rest of our lives feeling stressed out when this world is already not doing quite well at the moment. But just try to find something that you love, and then try to focus on that. Even if people make fun of you, and that maybe you are unlucky enough that you aren't able to make a career out of it, at least have a hobby that'll make you happy. When at the end of the day, many people believe that they're special, and I'm not meaning to say that everybody watching this is not special, but I used to believe that I was special, that I had something that other people didn't. But I came to terms, and it really hurt. I would cry endless days about it, because I wanted to become better. I thought that I'd had this potential, but at the end of the day, I struggle with many things, and now I have to come to terms with my limitations, and I have to work on the strengths that I already have, and those weaknesses I have to work on now, even though it's quite hard for me even today to work on the weaknesses, just because there are some days where I'm just so tired that I just want to give up. But I know that if I want to get to that goal of being able to have enough money where I can just relax and not have to work, like 40-50 years, then I think my stress and my struggles now are definitely worth it. Even if people older than me and have more experience in life, may say the opposite, but at the end of the day, it's quite selfish that I might be even running myself into a pit of just despair and stress for no reason. But that's already something that I came to terms with a long time ago, and I'm not trying to say that I'm this perfect person. I'm genuinely not, nor am I this figure that needs to be followed, or I'm trying to preach something. I just want people to understand that there are people out here who are struggling as well, and I don't want them to have to feel alone, because education, schooling isn't just the world that you live in. Once you get out of there, once you get onto the real world, your hand won't be held anymore, and you'll have to find a way to survive by yourself, even though you may be living with family, if you are lucky enough to have that. Luckily I am. And try to take advantage of that, and at the end of the day, just don't spend the rest of your life stressing out about what you can be. Just do what you can, and just try as hard as you can. And the days that you have of relaxation, either try to find that hobby that you have or want to have or need to keep you going, and try to spend as much time as you can with family. Even though there may be stretches of time where maybe you may be arguing or bickering, but at the end of the day, this family is something that will at the end of the day, family is something that will always be there for you, no matter what, through thick and thin. And I know that, I might be sounding a bit cringe right now, but this is genuinely the truth, and I wish I knew this when I was younger. And now I have people to rely on, and people that can also rely on me, because I was able to build myself up and become, a better person than I was now. I wasn't stuck in my echo chamber anymore when I was younger, and now I can do things that now I can purchase and do things that I only dreamt of when I was younger. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you for watching.